Hey, Micah Riot here. So, you know how I started this podcast to showcase how amazing and beautiful and fascinating and lovely people I get to tattoo are? Today is a prime example of that. Karen Riley is really one of the most kind humans I've ever met. And I just feel so lucky that I get to tattoo her, that she's given me so much freedom to help her come more inside her skin, to own her body, to love her body. I really feel honored to be part of her process around this and to be given so much freedom and so much trust. And I'm really excited for all of you to meet her. Quick content warning. We talk a little bit about childhood trauma, not a ton, not in detail, but it's there. And we also mention working with people living with HIV and AIDS, as well as domestic violence and substance abuse. Again, not in detail, but we mention those things. And with that, I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed making it for you.
It's easier to talk when I'm not on the table being stabbed.
That's very fair. Are you sitting on the floor?
I am sitting on the floor because the couch in here is leather. And I was afraid that if I moved, it would make leather fart noises. So I'm sitting on the floor.
You might be the most thoughtful guest I've ever had. Will you please introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, your, I don't know what else, your location, your age, and your go-to breakfast item?
Ooh, go-to breakfast. My name is Karin. I use she, her pronouns. I am located in Bayview in San Francisco, and I am a few weeks away from turning 52. I don't have a go-to breakfast item that I eat all the time. Recently, I've been having gluten-free sourdough bread because I took a cooking class where we made sourdough bread. And that's been good because I've been experimenting with the recipe and trying new things.
How is the bread? Is it delicious?
It's not delicious.
Okay. Like it does the job, but it's not quite as delicious as you'd like.
The texture is really good, which is not normally what people say about free bread. So the texture is really good, and I am enjoying eating bread that has a really crisp crust on it. It's chewy. I'm still playing with the flavor, though, because the blend of flours that I'm using right now isn't quite up to what I would like it to be.
You know what? Texture is like half the battle, right?
It is.
I feel like it's like even more important because you know what you can do to the flavor? Is put this on it.
Chili crisps. Yum.
I've discovered this magical category of food. And this might be my favorite brand. Do you know this stuff?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yeah, okay. It's apparently just me who wasn't familiar.
Yeah, it is. It's good stuff. I haven't tried it on bread, which sounds silly.
Put it on everything, really. Yeah.
I will try.
But for people who are just listening and not watching, what I was showing was a jar of a brand that comes from Japan called Muso. And it's umami black garlic chili crisps, which is just like a topping that I put on literally everything. And it consists of sesame oil, onion, seaweed, shiitake mushroom, garlic, sesame seeds, sea salt, chili pepper, sugar, tamari, soy sauce, some other things in smaller quantities. But essentially, it's just like a flavor bomb. Mm. And I've also gotten excited about trying to make it myself, which I haven't for a while, but to like take the sugar out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of different You know this about me, right? I'm such a
Yeah.
food nerd, but there are a lot of different cultural variations in spicy pepper sauces, right? Everyone has something. Um, and I know some from the Middle East use nuts instead
Mm-hmm.
of sugar. So that might be an option too.
Mm-hmm. I would collect this shit. Like I would literally collect it from all over the world. I love it. And I also
Party.
totally, and I didn't realize that I liked spice as much as I do. I feel like maybe now, like I get into ruts with my food, and I'll be like, okay, I'm having my chicken breast that I roasted with my vegetable, and it's like fine, but I just want there to be like a kick and like an experience in my mouth, and I'm so like, chicken breast again.
Yeah.
But like, it's what makes me feel good, so that's what I eat. But then I want like an experience.
Yeah. I don't think
So
it's a rut. I think you totally nailed it when you said it makes you feel good. That's not a rut. That's taking care of yourself.
yeah, but like, just in like the flavor sense of it, I get into this kind of like, oh, it's so boring.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, you have a lot of so you've been getting tattooed by me for
I have.
now what, 2 years?
I think that's right. I didn't look back to see when our first appointment was, but it seems like it's about 2 years because I remember my interview and that was over the holidays. It was probably November or December. Yeah. So it would have been 2 years
I
ago.
love that you're calling it an interview. Can you tell me more about why you're calling it an interview instead of a consultation?
I was laughing at myself because I was thinking back to some of the podcasts that I've listened to, some of your podcasts. And you were talking about the intake questionnaire that you do or you used to do with your clients. And you said something about, some people write a book. And I thought, oh, that's me. I took it really seriously. And I do take things like that seriously. Um, being considerate of other people and, what do you do in your local community? And that's huge for me. It's one of the things I like best about being in San Francisco and being in the Bay Area is that there is such an opportunity to make a difference immediately, locally, right? In my neighborhood, in my city, in the Bay Area. So I did think of that conversation, that first conversation we had, as an interview.
Who was interviewing whom?
You were interviewing me. I had already seen your work. I already knew that I liked your work. I knew what I wanted to get out of it. But I didn't know if I would be somebody that, right? Because again, referring back to your other podcast, I'm that middle-aged white lady, right? And literally named Karin. There is nothing, there is nothing about me that is, outside of the average everyday person from the outside. So I did take it really seriously.
I think it's so interesting how the most beautiful people humble themselves, to like this sort of like the labels of like, well, I'm white and my name is this, and like Liz does this, you do this, like, but I hear Liz do this, right? Like her name is Liz Williams, like the most common name in the world, in America. And she will just be like, well, I'm just like this basic average girl. And I'm just like, no, like, no, you're not. And also, like, what does that mean? So I hear you say that actually a fair amount. It's funny. I think you guys would like love each other.
I'm
And
sure we would. I'm sure we would. And do you know that my maiden name is Johnson?
oh yeah.
So, like, truly, there, and it's all about perception, right? From the outside, I'm an average middle-aged white lady, and if I introduced myself to someone by name, it's not going to identify me as anything but an average middle-aged white lady.
But it's like, what?
That's okay. That's where you find the people who you're supposed to spend time with, because they do go deeper than what you look like on the outside and what your name is, right? That's where you find the people who become part of your circles. But yeah, I'm very aware that on the outside, I just look like an average person, and that's okay.
And you know what's funny is that when I was younger and like more in the scene, like in the queer scene, where I would go to places and see people, which I don't do anymore, but people would be like, "You look familiar," and I'd be like, "I just look like a generic queer person."
Yeah, right. I look like an average middle-aged white lady.
And I think we all think that about ourselves. We just look like some generic queer person, some generic white lady, some colored hair punk rock girl. Like it's not. There's no. I think we all think that about ourselves.
Yeah, probably. And I know I spent a lot of time as a teenager and as a younger adult trying to stand out in different points in time in my life. And that was so uncomfortable for me. I didn't like attracting attention that way. So I am totally cool with not standing out. Does that sound weird?
No, I'm trying to ask you a question about that in a way that makes sense. So, how did you try to stand out before when you were younger? What did you try?
I was I've always been very into music. And when I was 13, 14, 15 ish, maybe not that old, maybe it was 12, 13, 14, whatever it was, I was very into kind of the alternative scene. It wasn't punk, because where I lived there wasn't a huge punk scene, but I had a mullet, right? It wasn't called a mullet at that point, but it was spiked, and I had a mullet, and I very much dressed androgynously with a lot of makeup, and usually in one color palette. I would do like really heavy pink makeup one day or really heavy purple makeup, and I did not fit in with the other folks my age, which was also okay at the time.
Are there photos of this?
I don't know. I don't actually have a lot of photos anymore. That's not something I hold on to. That's not stuff that I keep. It was also not an easy point in time in my life, so there's a lot of stuff I just haven't held on to.
Yeah. I would have loved to see a picture of Karin in her bright pink makeup with a spiked
mullet.
spiked mullet and like tight jeans and I don't know, kind of androgynous out. Like that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something you could pull off now.
I totally would. That's my comfort outfit too.
Bright pink makeup.
Yeah, all the bright pink barred makeup across the eyes. No, but the casual, loose, comfortable clothes.
I'm thinking more like punk rock, like 80s. I know you said it wasn't punk, it was more alternative, but I'm thinking like the
torn jeans,
like the rockers, more like the British style. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. I don't know if that.
Yeah, it totally is. It totally is. Yeah. David Bowie was huge on my list. I somehow managed to see him multiple times as a teenager with no car and no money.
It's amazing.
It really was. So I pulled off some really good stuff somehow and made it through.
So that thing about attention getting, you didn't like being in the center of attention. You didn't like people paying attention to you. So when did you shift like your look, from maybe being, and I think that when you were younger, like dressing that way can also be a way of like putting a wall up, right? Like don't come to me like I'm intimidating. Don't talk to me like I'm scary and I'm different. And so, but then that shifts into being more of like I'm just going to dress to look more invisible. So when do you think that shifted?
I think I always shifted my appearance based on the people I was friends with and where I was living. It took me a long time to figure out who I was independently. I think I'm still figuring it out. Mm-hmm. So for a long time in college, I dated someone who was in the Navy. So I was very much the like prim and proper and white heels and that kind of thing, which was highly entertaining. It was a very big shift. And then in the late 90s, early 90s, actually, and through the 90s, it was very much grunge, and big flannel shirts. And then I got a air quote proper job and needed to dress for work in a way that didn't cause trouble. So it was navy blue skirts and button-down shirts and pantyhose and all that kind of stuff. I don't even think I own pantyhose anymore, and I definitely don't have any pencil skirts left.
Because you're in the Bay now?
Because I'm in the Bay now.
Yeah.
Ooh. That would be standing out tremendously to wear anything like that. But yeah, and I think a lot of it was trying, as you said, trying to put up a wall when I was a teenager, and then trying to fit in so that I didn't draw attention, because that was never a safe thing to do. Mm-hmm. I've realized that there was a lot of, there were a lot of times when it just wasn't safe for me to bring attention to myself as a kid, as a young adult. So I didn't. It's
something I talked about with my therapist yesterday, actually, this topic. And I think she said that felt very new way to put it is we were talking, she was telling me how when a child grows up with caretakers that put their own needs before the child's needs, it's really hard for the child to then grow up and receive attention from people that love them.
Yes.
And really be able to receive it, because you always think that any attention coming into your sphere means that you have to then take care of other people's needs.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see that. In my case, it was not safe. Right, my father was an inconsistently treated bipolar, and at the time it was called manic depression, and that was a really good description for what he did and how that affected the rest of us. And so if you didn't draw attention, you wouldn't be the target of anything that was happening. Mm-hmm. And yes, I absolutely agree with you that when you have inconsistent parenting or an inconsistent household, right? I don't think this is just parenting, but if you're a child in a household where your needs are not taken care of, where you have to learn to be independent, it is very hard to get attention from anyone else, because it's not a safe thing. It makes things very uneven, very unstable.
Yeah. Yes. And it was the way that she specifically put it, like other people, when they come closer, it feels like it's all about their needs, even if it's not, and so you, as an adult, like you still kind of function that way of like, this is overwhelming, right? Yeah. Like getting attention.
And that's still true. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of things happening or being the center of attention, it's just hard because it's unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. I don't know that will ever go away. As much as I work on it, as much as my therapist tells me I'm doing a great job, it's just, it's a lifelong thing, right? It changes who you are and how you're wired as a person.
Yes. And it also, however, whatever our trauma is, it carries gifts too. It also makes us more perceptive, more considerate, more caring, like in different ways, more able to connect in certain ways, right? Even if some parts of connection are difficult, like receiving. But so, for me, this sort of sense of like being at the center of attention is bad and scary. As I get older, it feels like it's translating more and more into the way that I look also, like not so much about what I do to my skin, but more like I can't have a bright, colorful hair because people will comment on it. and it just feels like, why would I bother? For example, not that I want to have colorful hair. If I did, I'd have it. But when I've had hairstylists suggest color, I'd be like, can't pull it off. It's too much, and that and then inside I'm going, if I had bright blue hair, people would like comment on it. And I'd be like, I don't want to talk to you about it, So it kind of like translates to that too. And so I think that it can then translate to tattoos as well. So here we're getting the topic of tattoos. What I'm asking is like, does that feel relevant to you? Like you started to get tattoos recently, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're turning 52. So it's the second half of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're clearly very excited about them and passionate about them. And so does that feel relevant to this topic we're talking about of like how to center yourself in your own life and attention and the physical marks of sort of like, right, their attention getting things like maybe not when you go to work every day, but if you went to the beach and you wore a bikini,
right,
people will be like, hey, you've got flowers all over you.
Right. Yeah. It is relevant because I've had one tattoo for several decades, right? And that was a reminder tattoo. That was kind of not necessarily a memorial tattoo, but it was a reminder tattoo. And the flowers that you are doing for me are all about me, right? It's a celebration of the good things in my life. And it's funny that you say go to the beach. We were on vacation last week with my husband's family. And my sister-in-law, I hope I don't cry when I say this. My sister-in-law took a picture of me in my bathing suit and showed me later. I didn't know that she had taken it. And she showed me later and she said, I want you to see how beautiful your tattoos are in your bathing suit. She said, that is so gorgeous. And it was such an affirming thing to hear because I don't talk about what I'm doing with my body or my tattoos with my in-laws and my husband's family. It's my body. They're for me. And they hadn't seen them. And so to have her say, like, this is absolutely gorgeous. And I want you to see what it looks like from someone else's perspective. Just felt like it was one of the nicest things I've heard from someone ever. So yeah.
How did that attention feel? Like somebody noticed your body and noticed how you look, and like that's a lot.
It is. I think the attention didn't bother me because I didn't know it was happening when it was happening. Which makes it sound a little creepy, but I was fine with it in that context. And I don't know if it's because of who it came from or whether it's because I'm getting better at managing that.
Well, she sounds like a loving person.
She is.
Sister-in-law.
I am so fortunate. My chosen family, my chosen friends, the people in my circles, I have realized I have very intentionally surrounded myself with people who are just amazing I have some really amazing friends and chosen family. I'm extremely fortunate in that way. And count you among those people. So
I'm crying from your story as well. Mm-hmm. Is this a picture you're willing to share with me?
Yes, if I have it. I don't know if she sent it to me. She might have it on her phone, but yes, I will ask her to send it to me and I'll send it over.
And were you, besides like feeling kind of like loved in that moment, did you look at the picture and go, yes, I do look beautiful? Like,
I do. And you and I talk about that a lot, right? That's something that we talk about every time I'm on your table. And I looked at the picture and I can see the muscle definition coming back in my arms and in my back. Yeah, right.
I just made a face like, really? But okay.
And it was just, I think when you can recognize that people are in their authentic selves, it's a big deal. And it was neat to see it from someone else's perspective in me, because I did see it. And that's not something I have always seen in pictures of myself. So to see myself relaxed and having a conversation, and have someone else tell me that it's a really beautiful thing. Again, it was just super affirming. It was, I talked about that in therapy this week. And then I looked at my calendar to see when you and I have our next appointment.
So you could tell me about it?
Just so I could tell you about it and so that I could get more, right? Make more, make it bigger.
Make it bigger. Yes, let's do more. How did you come to the point where you decided it was time? And then when you decided it was the time, it was for flowers, and for that many and that much, like, how did you come to that?
That's a really good question. I didn't come to the decision of doing the my whole torso until last fall, when you and I discussed it. Prior to that, I had decided I wanted or needed reminders of the good people and the good things that had happened in my life. And for me, I'm very location oriented. And when I think about the places where I was happy, where things were good, one of the things I see in my mind are the plants and the flowers that were there. And that's how I wanted to memorialize that on my body.
It's a place you feel at peace. And
yeah. And why not literally carry that with me in a way that it was very present for me, not just a memory that I could pull up in my head, but a visible touchstone on my body.
Mm-hmm. And from like in my experience of doing, florals are a common theme, right, in tattooing. And it's probably something I would say out of all the work I've done, probably have 75% have been something to do with plants. But most people, when they come with a request for plants, they go, okay, I have these 5 plants that I want. Here's the amount of space I'm giving you for it. Make it work. Like, make a little bouquet, a little vignette, something happened like that. And you didn't do that. You were kind of like, I don't even know what you said, because it's hard for me to remember what people ask for, because I only can see what we came up with. And the process sort of gets lost almost, like from what you came with to the vision now. It's really hard for me to like bridge that in my mind, because it doesn't even exist to me anymore, like what you asked for. So what did you ask for?
I don't remember what I originally asked for either, because we've talked about it so much and it's changed so much in the past 2 years, right? So instead of doing, and no, I'm not a bouquet person. I am not a bouquet person in my life. When I had a house that had a yard and gardens, they were crazy gardens, right? They were cottage gardens with things pouring out of the flower beds. That's what's beautiful to me, right? Is the abundance and the overwhelming contained space. That to me that's living, right? And maybe that goes back to my childhood. I don't know. I haven't analyzed that. It doesn't matter. But what we talked about has changed over time. And when we have put something on my body, the placement, the color, the response that other people have had to it, my husband loves them, right? I love them. My friends who have seen them absolutely think they're gorgeous. Every single person asks who did them, right? Like, that to me is a really big deal. It's not just, oh, that's a really cool tattoo. It's like, oh my God, who did your tattoo? Where is that from? And why would I not want more of that? If it makes me feel good and it makes me like the way my body looks even more, why not? It's the same reason when I was working out 5 days a week that I worked out. I love the way I looked. I love the way that I moved. I love the way that it made me feel about myself. So if tattoos can do that, heck yeah. Yeah.
That's fair, but that's not what most people do, And so that's like another way that you're not so basic after
I
all.
was going to say, that's okay. I'm not normal people.
Right. Not so basic after all. But yeah, like you really have sort of given me a lot of space and scope to work with.
Mm-hmm.
But also yourself, I think when people limit themselves to like, I just want it this big and I want it over here and it has to just be contained in that space. It's not me they're limiting, it's themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so I try to talk them out of it sometimes, like, well, if you kind of let it grow more organically, it's going to be more pretty. It's going to belong on your body more. But people have a really certain idea, like tattoos are okay as long as they're, this big and take up this much space and don't take over and aren't, too.
Yeah. Nobody can see it through my work shirt. It's not going to show up if I'm wearing a tank top.
For sure. Yeah.
Why are you even doing it?
Yeah.
Why? That's not, again, it's just not who I am. And when I look at myself when I'm working out, if there's a mirror in front of me or I can see my reflection when I'm working out and the magnolia that I have on my shoulder, that petal, right? And I know you are really conscious of placement. I don't know if everyone else thinks about that, but the way that petal hits my shoulder, it moves so beautifully. And again, I know it may sound silly, but if the placement of a tattoo can make me want to do more chest presses or more military presses, great. It's just going to make the whole thing more beautiful.
It's a really powerful thing, I think, like how you see your body and if there's something that if it's a tattoo or if it's an outfit you're wearing that makes you feel like really good and powerful and attractive and all that, like, yeah, like those things are really helpful. They're tools in helping us get where we want to go, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The clothing, the tattoos, the haircut, the makeup, whatever it is, if something makes you feel better about who you are, I fully support that.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I do with my volunteer work, right? Helping people be comfortable in who they are, helping them maintain their lives, right? What's important to them in their lives. That's really, really important to me. So yeah, now that I can do it for myself, I will.
Will you tell us more about the volunteer work? Tell those listeners about your volunteer work.
Yeah, I volunteer. I volunteer several places, but where I am most active is with a program in San Francisco called the Shanti Project and their sister program called PAWS, which is an acronym, Pets Are Wonderful Support. And it started in the late 80s for folks experiencing AIDS who were in the hospital dying of this new cancer, right? There wasn't a name for it. And they just needed someone to sit and listen to them, right? These were people who were being told they were not going to survive, and so many of them didn't. And so it's being a volunteer, being paired with or matched with someone in the city who needs support. And it's not just folks who are or were, right? Maybe their virus levels can no longer be detected, which is fantastic. But folks who are or were HIV positive, women with cancer, folks within the LGBTQIA plus community who are aging and need physical assistance with shopping or cleaning, or just need someone to spend time with, right? Because a lot of these folks have lost friends. And, I think everyone who really cares about anybody in the LGBTQ community understands that they may also have lost their family. Family members just don't, whether you are in the community or not, family isn't forever, that's just not a thing. And so if I can provide that support to someone, I absolutely will. So I've been working with them since 2017, since I moved to the city. And now I also help facilitate training so that as new people come into the program, I get to work with folks who are training.
Do you still see clients? Like, do you have like some amount of folks that you see on some regular basis?
I don't have a single aligned client right now. My client passed. It's been 2 years ago, actually. And I haven't felt ready to take on anyone else. We were paired for 3 or 4 years, and we're very close. And that was hard. It was really hard for me. Not in that he was ready to go. It was the right time. That's okay. He's with his old boyfriends. He is with his old friends. Him leaving was okay. What was hard for me was opening up that much time and space long term to someone else. So I've done short term. And more of the pause. So on the pet side, it's helping people who maybe can't walk or because they are on chemo or unwell. It's not safe for them to clean up after their animals, doing that kind of thing. And also delivering food to people.
So you would basically come in for pet care.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like walk their dog and like.
Walk their dog. I have, this as well. I have, animal rescue experience. So if somebody needs a cat who needs to be pilled every day at 2:00, I'll go do that, or subcutaneous fluids, or taking someone's dog to the vet for a vet appointment because they're not mobile. Mm-hmm. They can't leave their apartment or go that far or be out of their apartment for that long a period of time. Mm-hmm. I'll take their pet to the vet for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really serious commitment to humanity.
It's so life-changing for the person you're helping. And honestly, again, I have the time. I have the ability to do this. If it's going to make someone else's life that much better, why would I not do it? I can spend an afternoon with an absolutely adorable, there's one client whose dog I've taken to the vet several times, and the dog's name is Sugar, and she is the sweetest. And she, I go to pick her up and she's happy to see me, and she's happy to get in the car, and she's happy to go to the vet, and she's happy to walk out of the vet, and she's happy to get home to her mom. And it's like, there is nothing bad about that. There's no bad in that.
How big is Sugar? Is she white?
Of course, she's a white little like mini poodle doodle mix. I don't know. She's a little white curly haired munchkin. And I would guess she's maybe just under 20 pounds. She's not as big as our cats used to be. So she's under 20 pounds. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love the way you're smiling, talking about this stuff and like this work.
It's a big deal. I love it.
When was the first time you were like exposed to the realities of folks like living with AIDS and queerness, like and how big of a deal that is in our world? And it's becoming less so. But when were you first sort of found out that there were people who were different in those ways and shunned by society because of it?
In the 80s, very early on, my mom was a nurse. She worked as a nurse and always did well, I was living at home. She always did women's care, usually labor and delivery or something to do with sexual health. And early on, nurses were aware that something was happening, and there were patients. I was too young to really be able to compare it to COVID, right? Patients that people didn't want to touch, patients that people didn't want to treat. But I knew that there was something that was not right. And I did not grow up in a very progressive area. So the idea that sick people who needed help were not being cared for didn't sit well with me. And I think I definitely had friends who I knew were gay in high school, but I went to a Catholic high school, so it was not a topic of conversation. And when I got to college, we had friends who were gay and who were out, which was great because it was nice to live in a place where people were comfortable with that, comfortable in being who they were and could be who they were with their friends openly. And then I lived in New York for a year after college, and that was in the mid-90s. So there was a very big gay presence. So yeah, I guess probably the most exposure I had was when I was in New York. That was the most variety of people, having the older gay couple that lived down the street and working with people who were gay, and then having city events around Pride. Mm-hmm. That was probably the most, the broadest exposure to different gay culture, the first time I had been exposed. And then, I don't know.
How come that was the sort of cause that you really poured your energy into, as opposed to addiction or women's, domestic violence, other kinds of big causes that you're probably also were really aware of?
Yeah, really good question. I think women's violence for me hit a little too close to home. Mm-hmm. That would have been exceptionally challenging for me to reconcile with my own experience, what I grew up with. That has taken me a really long time to face on my own. So I think doing anything publicly would have been too hard. And I still get very, very angry. I saw a meme the other day. Every woman has a friend who has an ancient rage inside of her, usually directed at men. I'm probably that friend for a lot of people. And yeah, that would have been too close. And my sister was an addict. So I think, again, that would have been just
also too close.
Yeah. It just, and I'm very aware of that as an adult, right? There are things that I can manage and handle because I still protect myself at some level. But I do feel like this is something I've really opened myself up to since moving to the city. And I love being here. I just love being in an area where everyone has the opportunity to celebrate who they are. And I know it's not perfect. I'm not blind to the fact that it is still extremely challenging. But we are very fortunate here that we have the resources that we do. We have the parades that we do. It's a very different world when I hear people who have lived in the Bay Area for most of their lives, or at least since they've been out, who talk about wanting to move to different places, or move. I grew up on the East Coast, so I think of moving back east as a really challenging thing to do. It's just not culturally, it's just not the same.
Even like New York and like places like that.
From my experience, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's my experience. Everyone has a different experience. And I was definitely not part of any groups when I was living in New York, that were as involved.
Well, you also had a lot less like personal resources at that time in all the ways.
Oh God, yes. Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't feed myself. I didn't have the ability to, to join anything else. But I definitely had a lot more fire when I was a kid. When I was younger, I had a lot more energy to be outraged about things and speak up about things. And I think it comes from a different place. It comes from a place of love now.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, there's also just, I think as you get older, you see the complexity of things that makes it a lot harder to just like yell one specific thing.
Yeah.
And also the structures that be are so strong that like exhausting yourself, like fighting against them isn't necessarily the best use of our energy and time. I think that's a part of it too. But it's always refreshing to hear people who are kind of like transplants to California. And I am also, but I've been here since I was 12, more or less, like when we came from Russia. So I kind of feel like if I am an American, I'm a Californian.
Yeah.
And how much I dream about going to the East Coast and kind of imagine it. And, having lived in Ohio for a time when I was in college, having that kind of romanticizing the change in weather, change in seasons and the red leaves of the fall and like the blossoms of the spring. And like, we have that here a little bit, right? But it's so subtle. And so I romanticize East Coast in a way of like, I'm from a place that has that. And I think about that, like how awesome it would be to like move back east and have a more chill life, like a less of a hustly life. And
and it's so not, right? Like
well, I don't know, right? But to hear
no one who lives in New York has a chill life.
Not New York. I do not want to be in the city of New York or the city of Boston. I don't want to be in a big city. My idea is more like Western Mass or like upstate New York. Like that's
grew up in Western Mass, and aside from Northampton, there is not much that is chill there.
Northampton is kind of where I want to be.
Northampton is awesome.
Yeah, I know. But I think it's an interesting thing to just like listen to you and like some other folks who are really happy to be here. It's actually pretty rare to hear somebody talk about how stoked they are to be here, because most of us just grumble about how difficult it is, how much crime there is, and how the disparity in class just makes things so desperate, and how difficult it is to see how much like misery and poverty there is, right? Like,
but I also feel like there's an opportunity to affect it.
Yeah.
And
that's the refreshing piece.
Yeah. And that's what I see as different, right? It's not that there aren't homeless people. It's not that there isn't crime.
Yeah.
But there are resources for people here. And I can go to Project Open Hand and volunteer for a day and know that the work I've done is going to feed 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the opportunity to do that back east. They wanted money. Any organization that I came across, and again, this was my experience, this may have been where I lived, but it's not that I didn't look. It's not that I didn't try. Mm-hmm. It was all, sure, if you want to make a donation, we'll take a donation. Unless you have a ton of money, that's just not an option. And
it's also not fulfilling. There's like a moment when you go, okay, I gave some money and it felt nice to give some money, but then you're like, oh, is the money going to like establishing an office somewhere that's going to push papers around that are about the people we're trying to help? It's not actually about the people. I hear that totally, and like during the pandemic, I had more time and I volunteered for the Alameda Food Bank, and it was so fun. Like, it was such a good time.
Yeah.
I did it for a while, I don't know, year or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to feel like I couldn't like physically do it anymore. I had some foot pain and I couldn't stand on my feet like that for a day, and I stopped. And of course, now they send me emails or mail being like, how about you give us some money?
Yeah, I get those too, right? I volunteered
Yeah.
for the city doing grocery shopping for people during the pandemic. The city partnered with the Shanti Project. So anyone who had been a volunteer who had actually gone through a background check could pick up gift certificates to Safeway.
Mm-hmm.
And it was $50 per family. And you had a list of groceries that they needed for the week. And I found out that I am still really good at shopping on a budget. I always came in at $50 or just below $50. I think twice I added a few cents to cover taxes and then dropped groceries off at, at people's doorsteps.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much fun, right? Like being out, and it was scary. I'm not going to lie. Being in the grocery store with other people,
yeah,
was a little scary. But I also knew I was double masked and I was gloved, and before we knew that we didn't have to clean our groceries, I always had a jar of Clorox wipes with me in the car, and I would wipe everything down when I put it down on someone's porch so they were picking up clean bags and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a very immediate way to give back.
Mm-hmm.
That's also how we got into animal rescue. When we were on the East Coast, and I literally couldn't find a group locally to volunteer with to help people, we started fostering dogs because that was a very immediate thing that would make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't continue that out here because of where we live. There's an HOA. Here's a Karin who's not a fan of HOAs. There's an HOA rule in our neighborhood that you can't have more than 2 dogs per household.
Otherwise, you'd have more, I'm sure.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your personal recipe to fulfilling life?
Ooh.
That sounds like volunteering is in there.
Yeah. For
what
me
else?
Personally, my family and friends, my husband, you and I have talked about this before, right? I found my person so early in life, and I am so fortunate to have done that. So maintaining my family, maintaining the friendships that I have that are really important to me, paying it forward.
So volunteering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, volunteering, but also, and maybe this still is volunteering, but being involved in my local community and paying attention to what's happening in the local community. So that's kind of volunteering, but it's also, I think, just being a good
citizen.
Yeah, a good citizen, a good neighbor. Mm-hmm. I think it's more than citizen because it's not about the city. It's about the people.
Mm-hmm. Good neighbor.
Yeah.
Dogs,
cats, animals, just animals in general. I don't know. That's a tough question for me.
Art,
food, music, all of the things, Micah, all of the things. Actually, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's variety.
You can have all of the things.
Yeah, I can have all of the things.
I allow it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you tattoo all of the things on my body for me? So that
you want all of the things? I thought you just wanted flowers.
We might have to throw a ladybug in there.
Okay.
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay, we can do that.
At some point.
If you want some bugs, I think they belong with flowers.
Mm-hmm.
They're interdependent. They have community together.
Yep. Yep.
I also feel like you need a back piece.
Oh yeah, the flowers are going to go all the way around to the back. There's going to be something.
But there's something about
Like a
I
whole
have
piece, a cohesive.
like a back piece, like not just like tattoos on your back, but like a full back piece. There's something to me about even especially a person who looks
Like a middle-aged white lady named Karen.
sure, a librarian. I'll just stand in of that for like librarian, right? Like just
Okay.
somebody who is like proper, somebody who little kids will approach and little ladies will approach and who just looks
Mhm.
very like innocent and respectable and societally
You
appropriate,
look
right?
respectable. So you're saying I look respectable. I appreciate that.
Well, why not? But you know, like
I do.
it's like somebody who doesn't look like that like and I guess a back piece
Mhm.
to me signifies very serious commitment to tattoos almost to a different extent because you can't see it yourself. So it's not
Mhm.
really, it is for you. Like they're all for us. Like no tattoos are ever for other people. But there's an energetic difference to that. Like you have this
Yeah.
big, beautiful canvas, right? This is the biggest piece of skin you have. It's the most you can do in a body besides a full body piece, which is another, I guess,
Mhm.
type of more extreme thing. But there's something about somebody who just doesn't look. Maybe that same librarian lady has a little wrist piece or a little,
Right.
ankle piece or something. But like if when she takes off her little blazer with the buttons,
And you can
with
see
a
through
sweater, and there's a
it.
full ass back piece, and it's like bold and it's big and it's there's something about that I just think is so great, and it's the unexpected for me. I think it's like the surprise in a person.
I see that, and I do agree with you. I think back pieces are beautiful. Having now been tattooed on multiple areas of my body, I also have so much more respect for people who have tattoos on the fronts of their bodies because the belly, the breasts, and the ribs.
The worst.
Yeah, like that to me, those are the people who are super tough. Like those are the areas where I thought it was going to be easier because there's more body fat. And no, there are more nerves, more nerve endings there.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can do my back. That's going to be nothing after you've done the front of my back.
I don't necessarily think that you know what you're talking about.
No, probably not. I have one magnolia and a branch on the back of my.
No, I mean, you know what you're talking about. You know that shit fucking hurts, but the back can surprisingly be difficult.
Yeah,
It
I'm sure.
can be, and
Yeah.
having like I have a back piece that is full and it uh, definitely were sessions that felt fine. And then there were sessions that were just fucking agony. And Corey, my artist, he works longer sessions than I usually do. So I think there's salvation there for my clients is people usually get away with like 3 hours tops. For
Mm-hmm.
me, where I have sat for like 4.5 with him, and it gets spicy. But you're tough, like you can fucking do it. But just so you know, the back can
Oh,
it
I'm
can be
sure.
spicy.
I don't think any of it's going to be easy, but also
Well, it's also easy because it's like bringing you closer to who you are on the inside.
it's chosen.
Yeah.
This is chosen. I know what I'm asking for. This is not a surprise. Um, but also, it's such a nice environment. Like yeah, I'm asking somebody to stab me repeatedly until the top layer of my skin is gone. But I'm gonna have a great conversation. Taylor is there now, and I, is there anyone who doesn't love Sailor? I mean, the
There's not.
entertain Lulu is there sometimes. There's nothing bad about being there. You're going to make a cup of tea for me. You're going to tell me to have a lollipop. We're going to talk about food. We're going to talk about dogs. We're going to talk about love lives. It's a really nice place to be. It's a great way to spend time.
I love that that is the kind of environment that it is, that someone like you feels good and safe and held there. That's what it's for.
Yep.
That's what it's about. And what I said earlier about you don't know what you're talking about, like, I need to recant that. Like, every tattoo you've gotten has been on the most sensitive of places on the body. You literally have covered first the most sensitive places on the body. So that's not what I meant. Like, you clearly very much know about tattoo pain.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I also appreciate that you always tell me what I'm getting into too. And I haven't had my knees done. I haven't done anything on my knee. I'm guessing the back of the knee or the top of the calf would also be spicy.
I think the back of the knee, you're right, is up there, and then the feet, the tops of the feet,
The
the
ankle
neck.
bone was not cool. That was not
Yeah,
that was not fun.
yeah. I have some ankle stuff. I don't have anything on the tops of my feet, and I feel like that would be hell.
Mm.
The neck. This might be something that might be happening this year for me. Is my best friend and I've been friends since we were in our early 20s, and she reminded me this year. She said, "Remember when you said that when we turn 40, we'll get our necks tattooed?" And I was like,
You're
"Did
overdue.
I?" I know, right? I'm overdue by a couple days. I was like, "But
Happy birthday, by the way."
thank you, thank you. It's been a good birthday." But I was like, I did say that, okay, I don't remember, but I believe you and I'm down. And so we've started talking about what and when. Her birthday is in November, so I don't feel like we need to rush. But maybe between now and hers, or, right after hers or something, we can approach that project, since there's a lot of projects this year.
Did you agree on where on the neck?
They're not matching. It's just
Okay.
our necks. Like, it's just a matter of, like, we're 40, we're established in our lives, more or less. I mean, things can change always, but that she and I both felt like at 40 we'll be ready for, like, a very visible, more serious kind of a socially unacceptable tattoo. And, like, I've had things done now with my hands that I feel like, in my 20s would have felt maybe not yet appropriate.
Yep. Yeah, that's
Which
fair.
is a stage of life I was at. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I love a neck tattoo. Liz is gonna have a hard time with it, but she'll have to get over it. Yeah,
She loves you.
she does.
Will love your tattoo.
She will. Just, there's some people are really into neck tattoos. She's not one of them.
Yeah, my husband, again, this will date us horribly. My husband had an eyebrow piercing back in the day, and I hated it.
Really?
I really, really did. I really did.
I feel like the eyebrow piercing of the 90s, though, they have this connotation of like a surfer boy. Was that what it was, or was it
And
something else?
actually, no, he wasn't a surfer boy, but that's why he ended up losing the piercing, because he was surfing and he wiped out. And
It ripped out.
no, it got sand in it.
Okay.
And so he had to have it like surgically cleaned up. He's got a scar from it. Yeah. Yeah.
And you were like, "I'm sorry that you're suffering, but, like, glad you don't have the piercing anymore."
Yeah. I don't remember how the conversation exactly went, but it was very much that. Like,
Yeah.
that's too bad. Can I drive you?
Well, don't worry. I'm not angling to put a neck tattoo on you, because I don't actually think that would be the
There's a
right thing for
lot of
you.
territory. That got a really long neck. Like that
You
would
do, but it's not about neck length. It's just a style thing. I just feel like it would.
a little. I mean, a lady.
I mean, a little bit, but I like don't
Okay.
see you with, like,
No.
some dark, like, neck tattoo situation. But I do see you with, like, a full back piece of sleeve, like those kinds of things.
Great.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to put up with me for a really long time.
I would love to. Please. Please, I would love to put up with you for a very, very long time.
Good. You're stuck.
Good. I'm going to ask you my kind of standard last question.
I have an answer.
Good. I'm going to ask it.
Great.
What's a small thing that's been making you happy lately?
I got new sheets. I got linen sheets, and I am absolutely loving them.
What color?
They're white.
Okay.
They're just plain white. but it's the texture and the fact that we've had this conversation too. I sleep hot, right? Menopause is not a joke. And sheets that are heavy or sticky are horrible right now. And the linen sheets have enough body to them that they don't like stick. No, I don't.
Right. They have an airy shape to them almost.
Yeah.
Like there's pockets of air in their structure.
Yes. And they have been fantastic. That's what I'm loving.
Are you a top sheet girly or no?
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
I've always been a top sheet person.
It's not something I grew up with. So when we moved here and I would go to someone else's house or, a hotel, and I'd always be like, I'm tangled up in this thing. I can't move. I hate this.
Yes. I don't like, I am so picky. There are so many things I'm picky about, Micah. I don't like the
Good.
tucked in. I don't want my feet trapped.
Yeah, no, tucked in. I agree.
But I also don't like the sheets to be messy. So I'm one of those people that pulls the sheets up tight, pulls the duvet up, and then folds the sheets over the top of the duvet. So you have like that.
A barrier for your face and stuff.
Yeah. And the sheets don't move that way because they're wrapped around the
Well, they don't move that way because you probably don't move that much. But if you fight with your bed the entire night.
Several times that I sleep like a corpse. So
I will fight my bed to the death.
Fighting for a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get your sheets? People might want to know.
I hesitate to say this because I'm afraid to say I haven't done a lot of research on the company.
Okay, you don't have to. We'll keep it secret. Find your own damn sheets, people.
I'll tell you, but I want you to take it out if they're not sustainable. I'm going to look it up as soon as.
No, don't tell me. Tell me when we tattoo.
All right, you can always add it to the comments later.
Yeah. And because I was thinking about it, because you said you're particular, I'm curious. When you go to a restaurant, are you a particular person about the seat that you get?
Slightly. That one's not as big for me. Where I sit is not as important to me. If there are just two of us, we're weirdos. James and I sit on the same side of the table or sit next to each other instead of across from each other.
Yeah, Liz and I do that too.
Yeah, it's easier to have a conversation that way too. You're not shouting across a table. I don't have to be the person who sits facing the door or anything like that. If I'm traveling alone, I'm more picky about it, but no, it's not a huge issue to me.
Okay. My curiosity was satisfied.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're the best. There's nothing basic about you at all. I love you to pieces, and I'm really, really happy that you found me.
I'm happy to have found you too. I'm happy you accepted me as your client.
I'm rolling my eyes right now.